Hi, welcome to another episode of Fearless and Free TV and today's edition of Spirit Lift Sunday. Today I'm going to be talking about 4D and the magic that occurs in the here and now. A lot of people have been wanting to bypass 4D. There's all this conversation about 3D to 5D, 3D, 5D, and not a lot of talk about 4D. So I'm going to get into that. Before I do, I just wanted to let you know, if you haven't yet, to jump over to my website and pick up your free gift. It's Rise Up. It's a simplified guide to the Great Awakening, spiritual revolution, and the Ascension. It's all about what's happening on the Earth realm right now, and there's an entire chapter dedicated to glossary terms, for those of you who are new to the awakening experience and wondering what a lot of these words mean. They're in this book. That's at victoriareynolds.com/free. And that will also get you signed up for my weekly or so newsletter. And I say or so because sometimes it's twice a week and sometimes it's every couple of weeks. It just depends on when I feel inspired to send out a newsletter. I also have a new community coming, and in that community space, I'm going to be providing inspirational blog posts daily and some other content that you can't find on the regular website. But that's coming soon. There's also my book, Free Your Spirit. This book I wrote specifically for people who are learning how to trust their own path. I find that self-trust is an issue a lot of people have, primarily because we've never been taught how to trust ourselves and to trust our own guidance. And so this book is all about freeing your spirit from the confines of, in this particular case, because I'm a spiritual teacher, a lot of the fear-based beliefs are actually found in our religiosity. So this is helping with that. Not to say that religions are bad, just to say that if you're someone who has decided your religious upbringing no longer suits you, this book will help you to navigate the process of letting it go without any grief or guilt. And Own Your True Worth. This is a really great book for anybody who's trying to figure out how to make more prosperity happen in their life, and they're having a hard time understanding their true worthiness and a lot of the fear-based beliefs that have been created in our structures, if you will, to keep us from understanding our true worth and value. This is a great book. I have found that unworthiness is one of the greatest plagues to the human experience, and this book talks about beliefs of unworthiness, where they come from, and how to let them go. And my book, Transcending Fear. This book I wrote in 2012. It is my story of my personal awakening experience and what my inner therapist teaching me how to heal my life. And at the time, it was after the 2008 recession. I find that major economic collapses tend to go hand in hand with awakening experiences. So if you were finding yourself an awakening experience, you might find this helpful to help you navigate what you're dealing with right now. So those are my 4 books. I also have some meditations over there. And I also do one-on-one spiritual counseling if you have some issues in your life that you need some help resolving. I'm available for that as well. Okay, so let's get to the 4D. If you've watched my videos before, I've talked about this in several of my previous videos about how I discovered 4D. Now, when I first began having my spiritual gifts activated, I had never even heard of dimensions. I had no idea what they were, that there was even a thing. And then my inner voice started explaining to me what was happening on the earth realm, as I prefer to call it. And I've always had a gift of insight, which I didn't know. When I was little, I knew things about things that no one else had ever told me. And I remember sometimes getting in trouble with my parents because I would ask them questions that they simply couldn't answer. So I've always had this ability to see into the future and to see what isn't necessarily physically real. So I can see beyond. I've always, in a sense, been able to see beyond the veil. The veil is what a lot of religions refer to it. So the veil is actually it's actually the 4D. So between Earth and heaven, which is 5D, a lot of people are talking about bringing heaven to earth, there's this 4D. And once we break through the veil into the 4D, we can start to see how much more is actually really available to us. We're no longer confined to just this 3D myopic reality that's kind of been cultivated and manipulated to appear that it's the only thing that's real. So in the 3D reality, we were separate from God. In the 3D reality, we have to go through religion to get to God. In the 3D reality, we have to follow our leaders. In the 3D reality, we have to honor and obey the governments and the religions and their leaders, and it's fear-based. So 3D is all about controlling humanity through fear and preventing us from finding our true connection to spirit and true connection to source and a connection to the expansive truth that's available. We just haven't been able to get to it because there's a veil that's been put into place. Some people refer to it as the matrix, and it's basically a barrier that keeps us from seeing into higher dimensions and higher possibilities. So what happens is that once people have an awakening experience, they kind of pop their head up out of the 3D and go, oh my gosh, there's so much more to the world than I ever even imagined possible. That's what happens in the 4D. So back in 2012, I was told in 2010 by my higher self, my inner voice, that the 3D and 4D were about to converge. And I had no idea what that was. I'd never heard 3D. I'd never heard 4D. I had a feeling, and I've never really mentioned this on a video before, but the day before I got that first message, my husband, as I call him, was sitting and we were watching Star Trek, and he said, well, if all these aliens exist, why can't we see them? And I said, I'm sure that they exist in a different dimension. And I was just like blabbering that. I didn't know what I was talking about. That was my feeling, was that response, that they exist in a different dimension and that's why we can't see them, which of course now I much more believe that 10 years later. But so that night I got a message that 3D and 4D were about to converge. And at first it terrified me because I remember when I was a child, my parents telling me that another planet was going to smash into planet Earth and everybody would die except for 144,000 people, and we were, of course, one of the only 44,000 people because cults tend to do that kind of thing. They think they're the only ones, and they got the only right way. And so that's how I grew up, terrified of the end of the world, constantly being terrorized with it. So when I first got this message, I thought it had something to do with that. And then I sat there for a minute. Oh, actually, I was in my bathtub, and what I've discovered is that spirit speaks much more clearly through me when I'm around and in water. And so sometimes I'll go walk in the ocean, stick my feet in the water and just get grounded in that. But there's something about being in the flow of water that also helps the flow of information. If it's the steam room or washing dishes, whatever it is. It says, so if you're wondering, that might actually be a trick for you too, if you're trying to get closer to your own inner truth, that sometimes being around water and in water helps with that process. So I was in the bathtub. I got this message that 3D and 4D were going to collide. I had no clue what that meant. The next day I got on the phone with a friend of mine. She goes, oh yeah, everybody knows that. That's old news. Everybody knows about dimensions. I didn't know about dimensions and what a friend of mine refers to as densities. I had no idea about them until that message came in. So in December of 2012, I was woken from my sleep with these two words, Convergence Complete. And I knew exactly what that meant. I knew that the convergence between the 3D and the 4D was complete. So the 3D fear-based reality, and then we have this 4D that was beginning to converge into the 3D. So there were enough of us who were already spiritually awake in 2012 to bring this new level of awareness, of awakening, of spirituality, of heaven onto the earth plane. It's a density that's very light. It's lighter than 3D, which is entirely fear-based. 4D is a combination of fear and love. It is a higher vibration than 3D. So when 4D converged with the 3D, that is when we started to experience what I was told would be a duality reality. That's why, since 2012, we have seen so much of this division take place. That has always been there, but it's become more and more and more and more obvious as the 4D completely takes hold and fully integrates in our human experience. So back in 2012, a whole bunch of us were talking about what 2012 meant. The Mayans calendar ended in 2012, and all these galactic events were happening in 2012. And those of us who were really paying attention knew it wasn't the end of the world, but the beginning of a new world. And so that's actually when the new Earth reality started being created here on planet Earth, because that's when 4D came and started integrating and anchoring into our collective human experience. The 4D brings with it more light, and because more light is coming in, it's exposing more of the shadows in our collective human experience. So there are a lot of people out there who are saying this is worse than the world has ever been, everything is worse than it's ever. It isn't that it's any worse than it's ever been. What's happening is that there is so much light now on the planet, because there's so many more people who've had their spiritual awakening, so much more light that's here, so many more angelic beings who are embodying human bodies, and so much more awareness of what's out there, that light is literally enlightening the earth, and that's what's making the shadows be revealed. So the darkness and the corruption and the control and the fear has always been there. It's been there since the story of Adam and Eve. That's actually what the story of Adam and Eve is all about. That's when fear came to the planet, and we as a collective of souls decided we wanted to experience the contrast of light and dark, love and fear. So nothing happens on our planet or anywhere in the universe that isn't already, I guess, approved might be the word. See, God for me isn't a man in the sky that judges people. It's the infinite energy of love itself that everything is made of. It's infinite intelligence and infinite wisdom and infinite love and infinite light and infinite allness. And so what happens on our planet is agreed upon by the collective of souls who choose to incarnate here. And so we've known for thousands of years that there is a time of peace that would be coming to the planet, because our collective of souls have chosen for that to be the case. That is what is beginning to happen, and started happening around 2012, as more and more and more light workers started waking up and having their spiritual awakening experiences and having their spiritual gifts activated. So the 4D is now so strongly anchored in our human experience that the 3D is starting to melt away, and there isn't much left of it. Now, if you're watching TV and you're on social media and you're hearing about all these horrible things that are happening in the world, it isn't because a 3D is still so anchored here. It's because it's starting to disappear, and all that's left of it is being brought to the surface for us to resolve with our 4D vibration. There actually isn't much of the fear-based reality left, because so many people are spiritually awake, and so many people are aware of how the human experience has been corrupted. So I don't see it in the same way I guess other people do, because I see it as corrupted cells. That and it's like playing a video game, right? In every video game, there's conflict and there's light and there's dark, and you're trying to get the treasures and trying to get to the end so you can level up. So we're at the very, very, very end of that 3D level of the game. At the very, very end of every level of every video game, that's when it gets the most difficult, because it's just before the leveling up. So the next level that we're moving into is 4D, and then up into 5D. So what's so great about 4D? Well, 4D is where all the darkness gets exposed. 4D is where we're actually able to see the darkness. It's a high enough vibration that it shines light on the darkness and exposes it until it gets so bright that the darkness can't even exist, until it gets so loving that fear can't even exist. Right now, why we're seeing so much fear and so much darkness is because it's being exposed by those of us that are holding the 4D vibration, and that have popped up above the veil of deception to be able to see everything that's going on. And so there are some people who have popped up into the 4D as far as being able to see the deception that's going on, but they haven't had their spiritual awakening yet. So this also happens in 4D. In 4D, that's where we start to process all of our stories. We process our life experiences. We dive deep, that's where we do our deep inner work and pull out all the beliefs that no longer serve us. That's where we have to decide whether the political beliefs actually serve us. And quite honestly, they don't, because politics are part of the old 3D paradigm in itself. And so the entire competition-based systems are going to disappear, because competition is based in fear. Collaboration, cooperation are based in love. So the higher we raise our vibration, literally the less interest we have in anything that's competitive. And that all of our systems, politics, finances, education, all of it, even our religions, they're all fear-based. And I know that's going to be really difficult for a lot of people who think their way is the only way and their religion's the only true religion. We really need to understand that everything constructed in the 3D reality is based in fear. And so this is about really diving in and taking a look at what beliefs are fear-based and literally unraveling them from the love-based truths. So it isn't that everything is completely based in fear, like fear is all that is, because everything is love and fear, right? The contrast exists in everything. So part of this is like how a rope is twisted, has two pieces of twine and they're twisted to make a rope. This is about like taking those two ends and pulling them apart and going, oh, I see, all of this is based in fear and all of this is based in love. Okay, I'm going to toss all the fear-based stuff and I'm going to keep all the love-based stuff. So all of our systems also have love in them as well. But there's a lot of what I call fear disguised as love, and that's what makes it really, really tricky, is trying to decipher between the two, trying to decipher what fear-based beliefs are actually fear disguised as love, and what truths are actually 100% love. So one of the easiest ways to be able to tell if something is fear-based is if there's a condition placed on it. If there's any kind of condition placed on it, it's fear-based. If you love me, then you'll do blah, blah, blah. If you love people, then you'll do blah, 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 right? So if there's a condition placed on it, then it's fear-based. It's a really, really easy way to be able to tell. So as you're listening to all the narratives that are going on in the planet right now, and that is, the medical field, the political field, the religious fields. There's a difference between religion and spirituality, and that's part of the unraveling too, is learning how to separate dogma from spirituality, because dogma tends to be fear-based. Once you start really looking at it, you'll start to see how dogmas are fear-based. So it's about learning how to be able to pull yourself out of the fear-based dogma and into this pure loving essence of spirit, where you have direct connection to whatever your name is for God. And that we no longer need the middleman of religions to connect us to this infiniteness of source. However, there will be people who will choose that, because that is where their comfort zone is. That's what they're most comfortable with, and it's really important that we don't make them. Anyone who is making the choice to stay in their 3D constructs, that those of us who have raised our vibration up enough to be able to see how the whole game is being played, it's really, really important that we not hold any againstness toward anyone who chooses to stay in those 3D constructs, because they are where they are, because that is where their soul has them. On a spiritual level, it is vital that we accept people where they are while we shine our lights the brightest we possibly can, so they can find their own way in the darkness and they can make the choices that are best for them. When we start telling people how to live their lives, that puts us back into fear and judgment. That puts us back into expectation. That puts us back into attachment. And suffering stems from our attachments to how we think things need to be. When we learn how to let go of our attachments, which are fear-based, then we can free our spirit to be able to be all that we're here to be, to hold our light so bright that it shines the way in the darkness for other people to find their own light and find their own way without us having to tell anybody who they need to be or what they need to do. Because as soon as we go into you have to and you should, we're actually propagating more fear onto them and into the collective story. So it's really important, and I know a lot of you have heard this before, don't should on ourselves and don't should on other people, because the word should is actually a fear-based word. And as soon as we start getting out of the shoulds and start getting to what is best for me, asking ourselves, is this what's best and aligned with my highest divine good? And then make your choices from that question. Remembering that divine love through you makes all things possible, through each of us. And it's not our job to make anybody else be who we think they need to be. And I know that's really, really difficult, especially for those of us who are parents and see our children making choices that aren't the ones that we would want them to make. And how difficult it is to watch them go off on their own path. You know, it's really interesting about that, because I have 2 teenagers and I'm watching them, especially my daughter that's 19. She's an adult now and she still lives at home, but I'm watching her make choices that are very different from the choices that I would like her to make. Now, I know who she is. I knew who she was born to be. She's a starseed, and she's been sucked into the dark narrative. And I see that happening, and you know what? And I have to be okay with that, because I don't know what her path is. I don't know what the trigger mechanism is going to be to wake her back up to the light that she came in to be. And I say that because when she was little, she told me she was here to be a light. And I'm not going to let her forget that. I've made that very clear. I'm not going to let you forget who you are. I know you have to make the choices you make, but I'm not going to let you forget that you told me you were here to be a light. So, but she's having to make her own choices. And at first that was really painful. And what's really interesting about that is it reminds me of when I first left home and made very, very different choices from what my parents would have wanted me to make. You know, I grew up in a fundamentalist, religious, polygamist cult. So the choices my parents wanted me to make were very much not aligned with what my inner voice was telling me were the best choices for me. But it helps me to understand, watching my children make their choices, how to be a conscious, neutral observer of the choices they make. My job as their parent is to guide them the best I can and help them be competent adults so they can make the best choices for themselves. It's not about me making choices for them. And so this whole thing has allowed me to look at my parents, who for a very long time I had issues with because of the way they raised me. It has helped me to see them with new eyes, and how much it must have hurt them to see me leave their religion to go off and trust my own path. And that it's allowing me to, even though they've both been gone for years, it's allowing me to let go of any attachments I had to them about how they raised me. And now I'm able to let go of my attachments to how my children are choosing to make the choices that they make. Because attachments are where suffering is. And suffering is a 3D, 4D experience. Now, the higher we raise ourselves within the 4D, we go from lower 4D to higher 4D, then the suffering isn't there anymore. And we really get to understand that things happen in life. How long we suffer is a choice. So all of us have painful experiences in our life. How we view those experiences, whether we hold ourselves in judgment and victimization of those experiences, how we attach to any kind of emotions to those experiences, and how we think they should have been and how other people should have been. Those are all stories that create suffering. They swirl around in our mind and they create more suffering. So if we can look at those stories with non-judgment and extract the lessons from them that we can, then we're no longer holding on to the suffering that comes with the attachment to those stories. So all of that happens in 4D. 4D is where the magic happens. And so many people want to bypass 4D and go straight from the fear and suffering of 3D into heaven on earth of 5D and bypass 4D, but that's where the magic is. 4D is where we start to physically create the new earth. 4D is where we get to experience the angelic realm. 4D is where the elementals start making themselves known to us. Now, we might not be able to see them, although some people can see them, but that's where we start to understand that magic is real. And that that's where our spiritual gifts get activated. That's where our awarenesses be made known to us. That's where spiritual enlightenment starts to kick in. That's where we start to see the bigger picture. I mean, everything that happens in this 5D that we want to bring to earth, which is this heaven on earth. So in 5D, it is heaven on earth. It is peace on earth. In 5D, there is no competition. There's no suffering. There's no fear. Fear except there's self-preservation, which is a little bit different than fear. But there's, the fear is the crap that goes on over and over and over in our heads. And it's guilt and shame and resentment and blame and all that stuff. All that stuff is fear-based. In 5D, heaven on earth, there is mutual support, acceptance, non-judgment. Concepts like racism cease to exist. It's, I was having a conversation a couple of days ago with a beautiful new soul sister friend, a long time friend. I don't know. We've done this show many times before together. Claire Candy Hoff. We had this amazing conversation a couple of days ago, and she also talks about 4D as well. And we're talking about how in 5D, there's no competition. There's only mutual support. This, racism, all these division conversations we're having right now will no longer exist. And there will become a time when humanity will look back at this time. They'll look back into this 3D, 4D reality that's been, for the last 25,000 years and say, wow, I can't believe people actually used to believe that. I can't believe people used to actually think that the one person was more valuable than another just because of their skincare. I can't believe people used to think that one gender was better than a different gender. And all these ridiculous conversations we're having right now exist for the sole purpose of distracting us from what's really possible. So let's stop being distracted by these conversations that are intended to, sorry, there was a fly buzzing through my view. These conversations that are intended to distract us from what's really possible so we can start getting our work done. It's like I said a couple of weeks ago, we're here to be light workers, not light sitters and waiter-arounders. I know that's not really a term, but there seem to be an awful lot of people who are sitting and waiting. There are a lot of people who have popped into 4D, but they're waiting for a savior of some kind. They're waiting for a president or a past president to come back and make things right. They're waiting for the president to make things right. They're waiting for Jesus to return to make things right. They're waiting for somebody else to make things right. So there's a whole bunch of people that are just sitting and waiting. And the issue is, that's how we got into the mess that we're in. The longer people sit and wait for someone else to resolve their issues, the darker the reality has gotten. So we need to wake up and remember that we actually are the ones we've been waiting for. And yes, in the spiritual community, we've been talking about that for at least the last 10 years. We're the ones we've been waiting for. We're the ones we've been waiting for. You know what? We are the ones we've been waiting for. And it's time to stop talking about it and actually step into conscious, intentional action and start physically creating the reality we're all talking about what we want to create. And stop expecting somebody else to create it. This is what happens in 4D. In 3D, people wait around for somebody else to tell them what to do. They wait around for a boss to give them a job. They wait around for the government to give them, a tax refund. Oh, that's funny. That one just came to me. Waiting around for someone to give them the right education. Waiting around for someone else to show them the way. waiting around for a minister to tell them what to do. And that's all part of that reality, of the belief that some are better than others, the belief that some people are better leaders and that other people are followers. That's all part of the old construct. In 5D that we are bringing to Earth, none of that exists. It's about all of us working together in harmony and in mutual support for the greatest good of all life on Earth. Not the greater good. That's not good enough. And actually, that term in itself is fear disguised as love. It's all about creating the kind of world all of us would really want the world to look like. We have the ability to create that. That creation is what happens in 4D. So 4D is where the new money is being brought into. So the new prosperity is actually coded at a high enough vibration that those in 3D won't be able to access it or control it. It's being made manifest in the 4D so that we can create heaven on earth with it. It's up to us to get out of our own way to make this prosperity possible. So the way that we invoke higher vibrations of prosperity into our life is to be willing to let go of all the fear-based beliefs about money that have intentionally been put into the human collective field to keep money out of the hands of the masses and in the hands of only the few. So we have to be willing to look at every single one of our beliefs. And a lot of those come from the Bible. Gonna put it right out there. They are fear-based beliefs to keep money out of the hands of ordinary people and in the hands of greed and control. And so if we're going to bring heaven to earth, we have to be willing to look at all of our beliefs, all of them, every single one of them. And so for a lot of people that are, what I've seen is that a lot of people who are spiritually awake are holding against us toward people that they think are conspiracy theorists. And so there's this right nagging going on between the two groups. You know, a lot of people who are awake and aware of the information, but they're like nagging at the people who are spiritually awake because they think that the term New Age is evil, which is complete crap. So, but they don't even know they're being taught a fear-based belief. So we need to stop seeing each other as the enemy and stop competing with each other and stop calling each other names, understanding that all of that, that's all 3D crap. For lack of a better word, it's 3D crap. And we can't take it with us into the higher densities, dimensions of reality that we are seeking to create on this planet. So it's really, really important for all of us to be willing to pull ourselves out of fear, out of the fear-based reality of 3D and look at everything through the eyes of possibility. One of the terms that I think it's in Chinese, I'm not completely sure, where there's the same word for crisis as opportunity. They're both the same thing, and they're both like two sides of the same experience. So we are in the collective of humanity. The entire earth is in what we would call a global crisis. And it's multiple crises. So, you know, it's the pandemic and the supposed injection to help prevent the pandemic from spreading. It's the global climate crisis. And I got to tell you, there is a climate crisis. So for all those people out there who think it's all made up and that it's fake news, they got to pull their heads out of the sand as well, because we are facing a climate crisis. But the question is where it came from and how to fix it. What we need is climate justice, and that means bringing the people who have created the mess to justice, not having the rest of us of humanity be held responsibility for the mistakes made by the billionaires, right? So in the crisis that we're in of what appears to be the planet not able to support us. Now, that's not true. The planet is prosperous. Everything in the entire universe was created to grow, thrive, and prosper, and that means the planet is thriving and prospering, as are each one of us as human beings, and all life on Earth is intended to grow, thrive, and prosper. So part of this is understanding that it's up to us as we move into 4D to create an environment for the Earth to heal herself, just as we create environments for our bodies, minds, and spirits to heal themselves. We also create an environment for the Earth to heal herself. The real crisis is that enough people aren't seeing what's really possible. And that is why the opposite of every crisis is opportunity. So as we're looking around and we see all of the systems falling apart, understanding that this is an opportunity for us to create a new reality. The crisis of, the dis-ease, physical, mentally, emotional, spiritual, financial, political, all across the planet. These are all dis-ease. And the great thing about disease is that it's curable. So let's start focusing on the cure rather than on the sickness. Yes, acknowledge the sickness exists, because we got to pull our heads out of the sand and stop pretending things don't exist, because they do. We need to acknowledge the disease exists, yet focus on the cure. Acknowledge the problems exist, yet focus on the solutions. The cure and the solutions exist in 4D. So let's stop trying to bypass 4D to get straight to 5D, because 4D is where the work gets done. 4D is why the light workers came here to do the work in the light that we came here to do. 4D is where magic happens. 4D is where money starts to flood the landscape to people who have a high enough vibration to use it on behalf of love instead of fear, to use it on behalf of light instead of darkness. 4D is where our spiritual gifts get activated and we suddenly become healers, right? And healers not just about healing the mind and the body, it's also about healing the planet and healing the animals and healing the ecosystems and healing the environment and healing our leadership structures and healing the air. In that sense, we're all here to be healers. There's so many people who think, well, I'm a Reiki therapist and that makes me a healer. That's great, and not everyone is here to be a Reiki therapist. Not everyone is here to be a conscious channel. Not everyone is here to be a spiritual teacher. But everyone is here now to be a healer of some kind. So let's start gathering up our healing modalities. Even if you are someone who's a spreadsheet creator, still a healer. Pick the system that works for you and start creating the spreadsheets to figure out how to heal whatever it is that you're interested in and focused on. Every single one of us have multiple gifts and multiple propensities and multiple passions and a purpose for being here. It's really more than one purpose, but ultimately our purpose. We all have the same purpose, which is to remember how to find the light within ourselves and to remember that we are all the embodiment of love. That is ultimately the same purpose every single one of us has. Some people will find it and some people won't. Some people won't be able to find their light in the darkness because the darkness has been so penetrated. Some people won't be able to find their loving essence in the fear because the fear has been so thick. But you know what? It's thinning and it's almost gone. The veil of deception is almost gone. And when it's completely obliterated by the light, all that remains is the rest of the shadow work. It's like, rolling up the carpets and sweeping out the dust from under the carpets and throwing it out. It's pulling all the dishes out of the cupboard and wiping down the cupboard. Right? And then we put the dishes back and we have what looks like a new kitchen. So really all that's left is that little bit of cleanup work. Just cleaning up the dust bunnies. Everything else, it's so light that the corruption will have no choice but to expose itself. And we don't have to be the ones to expose it. It is exposing itself just because we are holding so much light. And there will come a point when the light is so strong that darkness can't even exist. The shadows just completely dissipate. That is what we are heading for. That light happens in 4D. That's where we start. That's where the light workers get lit up. That's where the light work gets done. That's where we purge all the fear-based beliefs from our processes. That's where we do our individual work to find heaven on earth and peace on earth within ourselves. And when enough of us do that, that spreads outward, and that becomes the collective experience. It has never been about you need to lighten up. It's about I am learning how to lighten up inside myself. We are all way showers. We are all the light, and we are all the way, and we are all one with Source. We are all the embodiment of love, even those who don't even remember they are. It comes back to this: God is love, and love is all that is. So those people who are working in the dark just don't know who they are. And they've disconnected themselves from their true loving essence and their light source. Not entirely connected, because if they were completely disconnected, they couldn't exist, because there has to be just enough light to keep their heart beating. And that really what it means to love our enemies and pray for those who spitefully use us, as Yeshua put it, is to send them love. And to pray, if you're a praying person, that their hearts are healed and they remember who they are. The way to heal our entire human experience is to desire the healing of all life on earth, even those we may deem our enemies, even those we may deem the controllers of our human experience. Send them love, that they will remember who they are. Send them light, that they will find their own way in the darkness. Now, they may not, and there may be some who are just not curable of their disease. And their time on this planet will come to an end, as all things do. It is not our role to wish suffering on them. And it is not our role to wish death on them, because there are some people who consider themselves to be awake and aware that are wishing suffering and wishing death and wishing harm on other people, not even understanding that by propagating that on other people, they're actually slowing their own process. By propagating fear and againstness and anger and hatred, we are actually slowing down heaven on earth coming to our human experience. By calling people in the other political divide names, we are slowing down our own creation of heaven on earth. And every single person needs to come to understand the role they play in creating this reality we all say we want. If you really want to create heaven on earth, and you really want to create peace on earth, you've got to be willing to stop sending daggers to anyone else who isn't like you. That will keep the 3D in place and make it longer for it to melt away. Now, the light has already won. That is why we're seeing so much darkness. But by staying in anger and resentment and blame and judgment, we're actually holding the process here and making it last longer. So when we let go of all of that, we move into 4D, which is where ego melts away, judgment melts away, blame melts away, disease melts away, and where we find this direct connection to Source and the Spirit and to the Divine, then we become the creators of the new earth. And because so many of us are now in 4D, we are now able to bring a whole new level of prosperity into our human experience. We are now able to get together and begin to physically create the new earth experience. We can begin creating businesses that aren't aligned with the old competition-based, fear-based reality. We can begin to create new medical centers that are based purely in love and healing, not in medicating. We can begin creating new concepts, new communities that are based entirely in community and cooperation and mutual support, rather than these communities that are based entirely on how much money is in it for the city, that kind of thing. We can start creating our own gardens and growing our own food and bypass all of the different layers of control that have been placed in the food industry. A lot of people, I don't think, even realize how much control is actually in the food industry. I won't get into that, but basically, very little of our food is grown naturally. Let's put it that way. In the 4D reality, we can completely change how all of this is done. As that old world is dismantled, all of those old controls are dismantled, all of those old beliefs are dismantled, all of those old systems are dismantled, we can begin right now creating new ones so that as that old world fades away, there is an option for people to go to and where they can begin creating a new life in a new, better, more loving, truly sustainable and prosperous way. And that as long as we hold againstness toward the old constructs, we'll continue to have more of that, because what we resist persists. What we focus on is what's created. So as long as we're focusing on the storm, as long as we're focusing on the world that appears to be dark and collapsing and unhealthy and diseased, we'll have more of that, because that's what people are focusing on. So the more of us who take our focus and say, you know what, I see that over there, and I'm going to create something entirely new over here that is the opposite of what I see going on over there. Let's just start creating our own worlds. There's absolutely nothing stopping us from getting together and creating entirely new systems that do work on behalf of all of humanity. So people keep saying, well, when is the other stuff going to collapse? When is it going to collapse? When is this old world going to end? When is hell on earth going to disappear? And then they want it to happen right now. But if all of that happened right now, and we don't have these new 4D constructs in place, we would have mass chaos across the planet. That isn't going to finish collapsing until enough of us have created an alternative for people to move into. That's why I keep saying we are the ones we've been waiting for. We need to anchor everything we've got into 4D, 5D, and which is love-based. We need to see that 4D is where the magic occurs. 4D is where we begin creating our new realities and really anchor into this beautiful 4D space where we get to recreate everything. We get to recreate our stories from fear to love. We get to recreate our personal stories. We get to recreate the entire human collective story. And there are so many great things in our human story that just have never been taught, because the only thing that's ever taught is the fear. We get to recreate our experiences. We get to recreate our systems. We get to recreate our entire human experience. That is 4D. We can acknowledge 3D still exists, but it is starting to melt away, and it will eventually cease to exist because so many of us have moved ourselves into love instead of fear. And when enough of us are holding a vibration of light, and when enough of us are holding a vibration of fear, the 3D will cease to exist. It will actually get, it's interesting, what I'm seeing is it'll get like flatlined, like the way 1D and 2D are. We'll acknowledge its existence, but it's no longer part of our reality. And it will have been how we used to see the world and experience the world, but we'll no longer see it and experience it through the eyes of fear. We'll see and experience it all through the eyes of love. And what 4D does too is it allows us to see the magical realm, where in 5D we weren't able to. We were only able to see and experience what appears to be physically real. So when children are born, they're actually born in a higher dimensional frequency. And as they learn fear, their vibration gets lower. That's why children are able to see fairies and dragons and mermaids and all those magical creatures that as adults, most adults can't see until they raise their vibration up to be able to see them again. But children can see them because their vibration is at a higher frequency. Once fear starts to move into their awareness and their frequency gets lower, then they can't see those magical beings anymore and they can't experience the magic of life. As enough of us start then raising our vibration up to these higher frequencies, we start to again experience that magic again. And yes, there is some of that in 4D. That's also where dark magic is. That's also where the dark entities are, which is why some people can see them. That's the lower vibrations of 4D. So that's that. The higher 4D, of course, is where the angelic experiences get to be experienced, and where we get to have communications with the benevolent ETs that are helping us, that kind of thing. So the higher we raise our vibration, the more we're able to tap into what's possible and experience life beyond just what our physical eyes can see. And that's ultimately what we're looking for. Now, 5D is pure bliss. It's heaven on earth. And that is where the golden age of humanity is. That is where these new, it's where we'll be able to see each other's light bodies beyond just our physical bodies. It's where we'll be able to see colors that our eyes can't currently see right now. That's all 5D. And we will get there when enough of us go through 4D and peel off the layers of everything that is not that in order to arrive at that. Or rather, it isn't that we arrive at that, it's that we bring it into our collective human experience. First, it's about embracing 4D and doing all the work and all the magic and all the possibilities that exist here in this realm. And get busy creating the world we want to see. Not waiting around for anybody else to do it for us. Not waiting around for new regulations, not waiting around for a new leader, not waiting around for an old leader to be resurrected from the dead, not waiting around for any of that. Because this is it. And a lot of people don't understand that we are the Christed ones. We came here and embodied at this time specifically to create the new world, specifically to construct what we know is possible. And so many people want to bypass that and expect somebody else to come and save them. And it doesn't work that way. We save ourselves by remembering who we are, by remembering that we are here as the physical embodiment of Christ consciousness. This isn't about being Christian. This is about the Christ consciousness, which is the consciousness of unconditional love and the consciousness of oneness. When we get that that's who we are, and that's the work we're here to do, then we understand how amazing and extraordinary this 4D is and what it is offering us to completely change the entire experience for all life on earth. So let's not bypass this time. This is it. This is what we came here for. This is the time we came to experience and to create through. And the more we raise our vibration in 4D and the more we begin to create this new world, the more the old world will just fall away naturally, because fear cannot exist in the presence of love and darkness cannot exist in the presence of light. So be the light in all things and be divine love in all things. When you hold that as the knowingness and the beingness of who you are, you actually transmute the fear and the darkness into the nothingness from whence they came. And you assist in creating a new reality simply by your being. Every word you speak, every thought you have, every action, every belief, every deed, based in love and possibility, is what lifts the vibration of all of humanity and creates the possibility. And on the flip side, every word, thought, deed, belief, action that is based in fear continues to hold the collective in the reality of fear. So it's up to every single one of us to become infinitely conscious of every thought we have, every word we spew from our lips, every word we type from our fingertips, every action we take when we're out and about, every deed either feeds into the fear consciousness or feeds into the love consciousness. And it's up to every single one of us to make that choice of what role we're going to play and understand that every single one of us play a vital role. No matter how big or how small it may seem, every single one of us play a vital role in creating the world we want to see. Being the light we want to see in the world. Be the way shower for other people to find their own way. Be the light for other people to see their own light in the darkness. It really is up to us, and we really are the ones we've been waiting for. And the 4D is the time we've all been looking for, the space we've all been looking for. You know, holding space, that's what that is. We're holding a vibrational space for a new earth to be created by us, with us, and through us. It's in every one of us. That's my message for today. Again, as always, hold your light so high others can't help but see their own light. And now you understand what I really mean when I say that. Together we can and are creating a world based in love, peace, freedom, and prosperity for all. And as always, get bold, be fearless, and live free.